Hi everyone! In this review, I will continue to tell you about dwarf tomatoes. Some of them pleased me more than others. Some of them, despite my best efforts, failed to do so. Well, let's see why. The Tomato Express is on its way. Take your seats, we are getting started. I will start with a story about the Dwarf Perfect Harmony tomato. You have to agree, the name alone makes you want to grow it. Perfect Harmony is a beautiful plant with potato foliage. The variety created by the Dwarf Tomato Project reached a height of 4 feet 3 inches or 1.3 meters by midsummer. The fruits are bright yellow in color and have a medium-sized flat round shape. There were no small fruits. As the tomatoes ripen, the green streaks at the stalk fade and subtle pink tones begin to appear from the center. The tomatoes weighed just under 7 ounces or 200 grams and were about the same size throughout the season. On the cut, the color is very nice and rich, bright orange, uniform with no core. And behind this color is just an amazing taste of a real tomato. Memorable, mild, sweet. Acidity is very slight. It has a deep and balanced tomato flavor. This is a tomato you want to eat, and it literally melts in your mouth. There were reasons to give this variety exactly this name. The beauty and the taste of the fruit are in almost perfect harmony. In general, the experience of growing Dwarf Perfect Harmony has left me with extremely positive feelings. As one of the brightest representatives of the dwarf tomatoes family, and the only thing I regretted was that I grew only one plant. Another interesting tomato variety is called Dwarf Delta Moss. Developed by Blaine Horton of Mississippi, the sturdy plants with potato foliage reached an average height of 3 feet 11 inches or 1.2 meters. The fruits are flat round, ribbed, yellow-green striped when ripe, and in general are not similar to other varieties and look nice. My tomatoes were not the largest and weighed in around 3 ounces or between 84 and 94 grams. And the most beautiful of them, in my opinion, was the one that looked like a frog with big eyes. Perhaps it was a disguise, designed to keep me from eating it. Inside, the tomatoes have a deep green flesh that gives off a strong tomato aroma. The characteristics describe the flavor as citrusy, and indeed, I found it to have quite a bright acidity. But the longer you let the tomatoes ripen, the more sweetness will be in the flavor. Anyway, Dwarf Delta Moss is a beautiful variety, and it tastes alright, and definitely deserves to be grown at least once. The next tomato unfortunately could not meet my expectations, although I really liked its name. Dwarf Arctic Rose. Plants are compact, up to 1 foot 8 inches or half a meter high. Medium-sized fruit with red-pink color and, according to the description, are resistant to cool weather conditions. I can't say for 100% whether it's true, but they survived the hail relatively well. Tomatoes weighed from 4 to 7 ounces or from 116 to 196 grams, which is quite good considering the small height of the plants. On the cut, the fruits are red-pink in color, but the taste, unfortunately, could not please me. It's quite simple, without any bright features, although many sources describe it as excellent for an early ripening variety. But for me, it tasted a little bland. Maybe it was not suitable for my particular conditions, and of course I used these tomatoes only for processing and having a lot of much tastier varieties. I certainly haven't eaten the Arctic Rose raw, but in the end, it's up to you to decide whether to grow this variety or not. Once again, Dwarf Uluru Ochre remains one of my absolute favorites from season to season. A work of art from Patrinnanoski Small of Australia, named after the world-famous Uluru Rock, which is a giant sandstone monolith. It is believed that it began to form about 550 million years ago, when life was just starting to emerge on Earth. And naturally, this place is one of the main attractions of Australia. As for the Uluru Ochre tomato tomato. It in turn has long been one of the main attractions of my garden. In previous years, the plants reached a height of 5 feet 7 inches or 1.7 meters when grown in the greenhouse, and outdoors they reached only 3 feet 11 inches or 1.2 meters. But most remarkably, the fruits were much larger. Probably the variety doesn't like the hot temperatures. At the beginning of my tomato career, for a long time, I could not find a good, large-fruited variety for outdoor cultivation, so it was also low-growing and, most importantly, tasty. Getting to know dwarf tomatoes changed the situation completely. Of course, I like the unique color of these tomatoes, and it was the result of crossing dwarf Rosella purple with an orange indeterminate variety. The tomatoes grew fine in small pots, but of course, the fruit size was not as big. The tomatoes weighed 12 to 15 ounces or 343 to 435 grams, and I was more than satisfied with this result. As always, Uluru Ochre is inimitably beautiful on the inside. Yellow, green, orange tones, this tomato has literally everything. And of course, the taste, which is impossible to confuse with anything else. Sweet, fruity, with a nice acidity, complex and deep. Definitely one of the best among dwarf tomatoes, as well as among all other varieties. Uluru Ochre is a forever love, which is why I grow this variety every year, if only because I can be completely confident that I will definitely have these delicious tomatoes on my table every new season. And not surprisingly, both the creators of the Dwarf Tomato Project, Patrina and Craig, included in their personal top 10 most delicious dwarf tomatoes at once. I can only agree with this opinion because the Uluru Ochre tomato deserves the highest marks. And since I mentioned Craig, of course I will tell you about a variety that is the result of his work, Dwarf Wild Fred, another tomato that I particularly like. As in the case of Uluru Ochre, when grown outdoors, the tomatoes were much larger than in the greenhouse. However, the height of the plants was about the same 2 feet 7 inches or 80 centimeters. The tomatoes are slightly ribbed, brick pink in color. The amazing story behind the name of this variety is that Craig's father's name was Wilfred, and once his name was misspelled in a church program as Wild Fred La Jolla. It was a very funny mistake, and Craig subsequently decided to name the tomato that way. The weight of the first harvested fruits was exactly the same and amounted to almost 12 ounces or 333 grams. But most importantly, regardless of growing conditions and even after enduring extreme weather changes, the taste of tomatoes has remained consistently good. Excellent berry flavor with a combination of sweetness and tartness that completely complement each other. Wild Fred remains one of my favorite varieties by Craig for 2 years in a row. Great for salads, sandwiches and just eating fresh. Plus, it's not a tall plant that doesn't require much attention and it's very easy to grow. So even though Fred is wild, it will be easy for you to tame it. This was another story about 5 dwarf tomatoes. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe. You can find reviews of many other tomatoes on my channel. Thanks for watching. I wish you all a good tomato season and of course, love tomatoes, grow tomatoes. This is the Lucky Garden channel and see you soon.